coffee, huh?
I know. So we live?
Yeah,
Right.
I think so.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics and Money, formerly known as Geopolitics in Conflict. By the way, did you know that I didn't recognize it was you last time on my live stream? And I keep telling the community, no, Elizabeth is not here. That was like, I was embarrassed when I found out later on that it was you.
It must have been so funny. You must have been like, do they think I'm Elizabeth?
Yeah, I was like, what the heck?
We look really similar, so it's hard. It's really hard to tell us apart.
Anyway, very, very, very excited to be with you guys. I hope your day is going well, your afternoon, your evening, whatever part of the world. Please make sure to tell us where you are joining us from. Just type in the country or location, city, whatever. So
no, it was really fun because I don't really get to see the chat here. I mean, neither of us.
Oh,
really
you
get to
won't
see the chat
believe
here.
we got community also active in the other one as well.
And so I got to actually chat with you guys, that was really fun. I really enjoyed
Well, now
it.
here's the deal. Next time you're gonna do that, just text me quickly so I know. So I won't embarrass myself.
Well, it was kind of last minute. I was working on the channel and I saw it and I was like, man, I'll just jump in. It'll be fun. It was really fun for me.
Anyway, so excited to be with you guys. We have an interesting topic for you now. A lot of Americans have no idea about the so-called magic money.
This is hilarious, actually.
My days in DC, I remember because it was at the time Alan Greenspan, then Ben Bernanke came after him, which by the way, one day I was flying to Frankfurt and Alan Greenspan was in front of me, sitting in the business class right there with his bodyguard. Of course, you don't talk to the guy, and I won't talk to him. I don't care. Why would I care? But it was just the idea. I was going to Europe at that time because I was aware of what was going on, to pressure the ECB, the European Central Bank. I was one of those deals. So anyway, I just wanted to.
How I feel about central banks.
Oh yeah.
So
pressure. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. But
super interesting.
In any event, this is what we're gonna be addressing about what is this magic money, because most Americans have no clue, as I mentioned. And also we're gonna cover during our conversation the idea about how the Canadian and the European pulled the trigger on the tariffs. Yes, there are some. For example, the Europeans are saying they're not gonna go now, but still.
Well, so I have a couple of theories actually about what's happening with the tariffs, because so we'll show a video a little bit later of the White House press secretary showing how much she knows about tariffs, which is actually very, very frustrating. We'll dive into that in a bit, but there really is something weird about the tariffs.
Yeah.
And so I have a theory. I pieced together a couple of things that I've heard from very wealthy people, and I'm curious.
Did you ask them to support the channel?
I did not.
Oh.
Well, I did not get to ask them anything, unfortunately. I would love to ask Ray Dalio anything. He is somebody that I think is brilliant.
Yeah, he's knowledgeable.
I think he is knowledgeable at a point in his life where he's very willing to share his knowledge.
Yeah,
I really like Ray Dalio.
How about if we extend an invitation to come on the show?
I would love to have him. Guys, if you ever see Ray Dalio anywhere, please let him know.
I'll compose an email and send it to him. So we'll see.
Anyway, so we'll dive a little bit further into the Trump tariffs, because they're very heavily affecting the world. And the question kind of is why? Like, why is he doing this? Why is this happening? But why don't we start with Elon Musk's findings of, he said 14 computers basically that print money out of thin air.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, before we launch into this, Hang In G, good to see you here as always. It is what I wrote. Private citizens cannot print money. Companies cannot print money. Sovereign countries can print money. Example, QE, quantitative easing. Some countries are addicted to QE. In others, QE and squandering the cash in 5 years.
So I will say yes, and also no, because the Federal Reserve is not a government. The Fed is a private bank, right?
Yeah.
It's a private institution.
Yeah.
And most central banks across the world are actually not owned by the government that they supposedly represent.
They're independent.
And so that's actually a huge part of what the problem is, when the Fed is QEing, it is not in fact the government.
The government is.
And this situation also actually isn't QE. It's just I don't know why, but there are these computers that basically just like throw money at people.
But the interesting thing about what you just said, it tells you who's really in charge.
Absolutely.
So when you have the central banks, in our case, the Federal Reserve, dictating the terms, it tells you right there who's. Let's play our clip and we'll take a listen.
Let's play it. Oh, hold on. Sorry, guys. I got to add it to. All right. So this is Ted Cruz's podcast from the White House. I didn't know that it existed. I'm not necessarily a fan of Ted Cruz, but this was kind of an entertaining thing.
Yeah.
Let me know if you guys can see it, because sometimes you can't see what I'm playing. All right, let's listen in.
One of the things you told me about is what you call insane. Magic money computers at the Treasury. So tell us about it, because I never heard of that until you brought that up.
Okay, so you may think that that the government computers like all talk to each other, they synchronize, they add up what funds are going somewhere, and it's it's coherent. That there's and that the numbers, for example, that you're presented as a senator, are actually the real numbers.
One would think.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they're not totally wrong, but they're probably off by 5% or 10% in some cases. So I call a magic money computer any computer which can just make money out of thin air. That's magic money.
Wow. So how does that work?
It just issues payments.
And you said there's something like 11 of these computers at Treasury that are sending out trillions in payments?
They're mostly at Treasury. Some are, but there's some at HHS, there's one or two at state. There's some at DOD. I think we found now 14 magic money computers.
14, okay.
They just send money out of nothing.
You have an ability to see where leverage points are and how things actually happen. So I remember back, I think it was September, October of this year, before the election, we didn't know who was going to win. And I was at your house in Austin. We were talking about it. And you said, you said, look, I don't want a job in Washington. And you said, all I want is the login for every computer. And I remember thinking at the time that sounded kind of weird. Like I just didn't get it. And I have to say what's interesting on this, if I would have thought like, okay, how do you reform government? Like sort of the traditional way to think about it is, okay, give me an org chart. Let me sit down with the people who are running agencies. And what you saw immediately is to understand what's really going on, get to the payment systems, get to the computers.
Yeah.
Like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
very, very problematic, because here's the thing, is that the idea that these computers are not, you will think in the government, usually, at least I remember my days back in Washington, if we needed to be a conversation with some entity within the government, the computers were synchronized. It was, at least for any of you in the military, you would know when I say SIPRNet. That was how we would communicate inside the Pentagon, inside the military Department of Defense. So what Elon Musk is talking about here is that those computers are not synchronized. Another word, the computers can go about to do whatever.
Right. So, and it's interesting. So he said one of them's at the Treasury. They're at a couple of other locations. But what's interesting is, and Elon Musk doesn't actually say how much money is being printed through these machines. Ted Cruz is the one that says, oh, there's trillions of dollars. So like, I want to be clear there.
Yeah.
So he's not, as far as I can tell, he's not saying exactly how much money has been run through these computers.
So here's a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think Elon Musk was told not to disclose that number?
It's very possible. I think that's extremely possible, because Elon Musk has to, I think, walk a very fine line. To be clear, I'm not a big Ted Cruz fan. Ted Cruz left Texans, of which we are.
Yeah. Oh no.
In the middle of a freeze, he was like, all right, y'all, you guys.
Yeah. How can we forget that? How can we forget that?
Ted Cruz.
No.
But I think Elon Musk has to walk a very interesting line here, because I think that the government waste goes so far beyond what he's able to say. A little bit further, or a little bit earlier in this interview, he talks about a former Democratic senator, I believe, where her nonprofits that had $100 in their bank account at the time, it was brand new nonprofit, $100 in the bank account, received a $2 billion grant from the US government. And so, and that's it's a grant, right? So it's not a loan. She wasn't responsible for paying it back. And then a little bit earlier, he also talks about the fact that there is absolutely no oversight in terms of spending once that money has been given to a nonprofit, and that what they're seeing is that these large nonprofits or small nonprofits, this one was completely brand new, unknown, were giving their executives giant salaries, giant bonuses, and really not doing very much.
Well, it shows you right there how corrupted and broken the system is.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, this point here, you have to go back to 2002. Why 2002? Because that's when the Fed chairman at that time, he was Bernanke, Ben Bernanke.
Yeah, Bernanke.
So funny, I used to listen to his hearings for the finance committee in Congress, because it was always interesting how, and even back then, for me, I put the question mark as I put the question mark back then, thinking to myself, is this how they are controlling the policies?
Yeah.
Because remember, the Fed can really make the economy go up or go down.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, because I have, go ahead.
But
David,
allow me to share this just with the community.
Please.
Here's what Ben Bernanke said back in 2002. So the US government has a technology called a printing press. Today, it's electronic equivalent that allows it to produce as many US dollars as it wishes at essentially no cost. End of quote. That tells you right there where the problem is. When you have to print as much as you can at no cost, of course, there is a cost to that. And the cost comes to the average citizen.
Absolutely. Well, and so we've talked about this before, because this, these computers, it's very easy to say, because Elon Musk is asked this earlier in this conversation also. He said, what percentage of it is just not neglect, but
wasted?
No, like it's just mismanaged, right? So, and what part of it is malice? So what part of it is intentional fraud? And then what part of it is just the government is just this massively disorganized entity, right? And so he said probably in his estimate, it's 20% malice and then 80% just mishandled situation, right? So, but in terms of printing money in an environment where our debt is what it is, if at the point where, we were looking at another government shutdown recently, I feel like nobody even talked about it, because it's like, okay, here's another one.
Well, there is a conversation going on about that, because you know what happened? What just happened yesterday is that Chuck Schumer, I think, resigned. Well, because the Democrats turned on him. I know, it's about time. But no, you brought up a good point. You brought up a good point as far as nobody's talking about the shutdown.
Right. And so I'm going to dive into that in a minute, because I know tariffs are like not the sexiest, most like, wow, oh my gosh, what a cool, exciting thing to be talking about is tariffs. I know it's not sexy, but it's so, so important. And it's so important because tariffs are, number one, global relations. It is the lifeblood between countries, is commerce, is economic trade. And so tariffs are a very interesting and aggressive way to sort of manage, manipulate, bully, whatever, or make it equal, right?
Yeah.
As Trump is talking about. Do you want to dive into tariffs, or do you want to stick with this for a second?
Let's do the tariffs, then we'll go back. Ooh. Just before that one, you heard what happened to now Elon Musk's Tesla, that they've been burnt, some of the locations. Makes you just wonder. And this is, to me, once again, it's of importance.
Yeah.
You're going to have to ask the question, who will benefit from targeting the Tesla dealership? Whether you like the car or not is beside the point, is irrelevant. But the point is, why is he being targeted? They're already pointing fingers. They are already pointing fingers to the other party.
Yeah.
Because we know the history, how it goes.
Well, but here's also the thing. So Elon Musk has become very, very unpopular. And so you're seeing it all over the place, right? Like he used to be like kind of the poster child for, wow, this is so cool. Look, it's Tesla, look at SpaceX, it's Elon Musk. But because he has now reorganized things in ways that many people who were, because even if all of those people that were 300 years old on Social Security, even if that was just an accident, right? Like, let's say that wasn't fraud, that was an accident, but somebody is not going to be benefiting from that anymore.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I think every person that I've ever talked to that has come out of the military has said the amount of waste is staggering.
It's substantial. Now, where's the concern with this one? I'm thinking about it just to share it with you guys. This idea of burning the Tesla dealerships in locations. Where, you know, where the concern about all this, beside that, is that some entity went ahead and established a website. And the website disclosing the name, addresses, phone numbers, and everything of Tesla owners. I just found out this morning. I was like, what has become of this country to go this far into targeting, you know?
Well, Tesla owner is not Elon Musk. A Tesla owner is not going into the government looking at what Doge is doing. Like,
but this also leads us to the big picture. And the big picture is that, you know, if we think that Mr. Trump is really caring for what's going on, whatever, you are mistaken. You are mistaken. Look now what he's doing in Middle East. I mean, come on, we gotta be straightforward, because you know, to me, it's like you can't be cherry picking the information. So if you are to say you want to be out of peace, just while I'm thinking about it,
absolutely,
because I just had this morning an interview regarding this topic. If you are to say you want a peace, well, then do what's right. Let's start first by pulling the U.S. out of NATO.
To be fair to Trump, he doesn't have the power, I think, to do.
Yeah, but he's picking on somebody smaller than his, like Yemen. What does Yemen have? You know.
Sure.
But to his surprise, he doesn't realize that the Yemenis are fighting back. The Houthis are fighting back. Well, they're not going to back down.
But that's what I'm trying to say is the Middle East has been a really awful hotbed for the United States
because we want it.
Time.
We want it.
Right.
We
that's
want
what
it.
I'm
if you
saying.
know the history of the region, I wrote extensively about that part of the world. I spent time on the ground. If you only know how many sort of conflict we have created for a reason. And you're still seeing this now, because all of a sudden you're seeing this coming up. And speaking of that, to tie it to the economy, if you only know how many billions have been lost to the global economy because of the blockade on Red Sea. And the U.S. couldn't lift that. So to bring this back home regarding the topic we're talking about, I give credit where credit is due, that if Trump is doing the right thing. But on the other hand, you do one thing right and you go and you start just targeting defenseless people. That's, to me, it doesn't make any sense. Let's focus on the economy here at home.
Definitely. I agree with that. And the United States has no business in the Middle East. Like
not at all.
It's hard to argue for continued U.S. presence in the Middle East. It's hard to argue that. Okay? So I definitely agree with you. What I will say is that the president, regardless of who the president is, always gets it's the president's fault that this is happening. It's just not true.
Yeah, but the buck stops with the president. You kind of make a decision.
I don't think it does.
Well, it doesn't to a degree, but it's still, if you are not able to make those kind of hard decisions, then don't run for office. Simple as that.
I don't. As much as I agree with that in an ideal world, I don't think that's the world we live in.
It is different for the president. I understand, especially when a new president inaugurates. The first thing he has to do is go to the White House, go to the desk. There is a folder there, black folder. That's usually where the key issues. Those are usually the latest, what do you call them? The PDB. The presidential daily briefings.
Absolutely.
Those are the latest, and that's usually based only on 24-hour intelligence gatherings from around the world.
Right.
But there will be some hot issues that they have to be maintained.
Sure, absolutely.
Which what the predecessor has to put in that folder for the current president to follow through. I know.
I don't think the predecessor put.
Oh, the predecessor was in a mess
anything
anyway.
there.
As a matter of fact, now they are challenging the signature for the pardon.
Because it showed that almost all except one.
It was electronic, which is, you can't do that.
Well, in case you guys did not know this, so President Biden was in decline for some part of it. Became very obvious towards the end, but it was probably happening in the beginning too. And so most of the documents that he signed were signed via auto pen. So he did not sign any of them except for one. He signed one thing. And so Trump is trying to overturn especially the pardons, but a lot of what Biden did, because what their administration is saying is that the actual President Biden didn't actually sign those things. It could have been a staffer. It could have been someone else. It could have been anyone else
who might be benefiting from that.
And he may not have even been aware that those things were being signed. And that's probably fair.
Because also, let's be honest about it. Trump didn't do anything different in his first term prior to leaving when he issued so many pardons.
Sure.
And it was some
money. They
money,
always do.
And there was some money circulating, at least to my knowledge.
I'm
so it wasn't for free, shall we say.
But
so
people have a short memory. And so people don't, I didn't, whatever.
But also it highlights how sort of corrupted our system is. Anyway, let's get into our tariffs.
Let me share this video because this is from the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who I am sure is a lovely person, but this pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah.
It pissed me off also. So I'm going to share it with you guys so it can piss you off too.
And you'll reach your own conclusion.
Okay, let me share it. All right, can you guys see it? Because sometimes
fraud and abuse. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline.
You're welcome.
If we could just step back for a second. When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax.
Also, body language. Guys, what emotion do you feel like she is expressing in this moment?
Tax cuts.
That girl could.
He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious
he's not
for why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have. They don't get charged on foreign companies. They get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the
she's out of line with that.
Not all blondes are like that, guys. Oh my God.
She's out of line. So if she can't handle,
she's wrong.
If she can't handle the heat, she needs to get out. So simple as that. But anyway, she's just like the mouthpiece for what. That's usually the role of the press secretary. Just FYI to let you know what a role is. He or she will have to push the agenda for what the talking points that will be given to him or her regarding whatever issues. But as far as knowledge, she was wrong on this one.
Well, and to be clear, like this has got to be the hardest job. Like
the
press secretary has got to be the hardest job. But I will say this, and this is what bothered me so much. We watched during the Biden presidency, we watched whoever the press secretary was at the time do this exact same thing.
What was her name? Jean,
and there were a couple of people. It was like we had like a revolving door, right?
Yeah.
But they did the exact same thing. It's like treating the American people like they're blind or stupid. And the reason that Donald Trump got elected is because people were tired of being treated like they're blind or stupid. And so please, if anyone from the Trump administration or anyone knows the Trump administration, fix this now. Because the American people need to trust whoever our leader is. And this is stupid. Like, you don't have to have a degree in economics to understand that he's right. It is the importers that are paying the tax, the tariff. It's not the Chinese manufacturers don't have the margin to give. Where are they going to get that money from? They're going to do it at a loss, or there's going to be a loss of quality. And I guarantee they're not going to make it at a loss. They're not going to pay to sell money or to sell stuff to the United States. Yeah. So if anyone from the Trump administration is watching this, stop treating people like they are stupid. People understand that it is actually a tax on the American people because there is nowhere else for it to come from, and large corporations are not going to eat into their profits willingly.
Well, that's why you have for example, while on the topic of tariffs, you have those three key countries, two countries, Canada and China, Mexico to a degree, but the EU regarding they all pulled the trigger regarding the reciprocity as far as tariffs. So you look at China imposed the 15 first from, I remember, if I am to recall, I have it right. Yeah, on March 10th, that's when they put the 15% tariff. So China on agriculture, because that's usually the key. Chinese know what they were doing. So, and when Trump tried to sort of escalate, Chinese weren't backing down. And because what Trump was trying to do with the Chinese, which is exactly his strategy now with Iran, even though on a different level, with Iran has to do with the nuclear program and the missile technology, with the Chinese has to do with trade. What he wants to do, he wants to come from so-called position of strength by having the leverage. Ain't gonna work this time around because the world has changed. The system has changed, especially now when it comes down to dealing with the Chinese. You know, Chinese not gonna back down. Chinese are expecting about 5%, between 5.0 to 5.2% GDP in this coming year. So what are we expecting? Our GDP won't be at that level.
Well, no, but so let's dive into this a little bit further. And I would like to share something that Ray Dalio said. I'm a big fan of Ray Dalio, in case no one here realized that. I'm a huge fan of Ray Dalio. But I wanted to share something that he said in Singapore a week ago.
He did a speaking
engagement
he did. There. I was aware of that one in Singapore.
Yeah, fantastic. It's certainly worth listening to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I want to say that I really like let me see if I can find it. So I really like Visual Capitalist because they put things in very interesting perspective, seeing them in a like a graph instead of just numbers. So let me share this lovely ranked world's top 20 economies by GDP growth. So let me share that here. Okay. So, and I'm going to make the ads go away. There's so many ads on Visual Capitalist, though. That's the downside to Visual Capitalist. Okay. So in terms of the world's top economies by GDP, we're still clearly at the top. Okay, like there's a little bit more than $10 trillion difference between the US and China. Now, but look at this percent change though in the last decade. I mean, that's substantial. A 74% change, a 74% growth, that's phenomenal. However, China, like we say all the time, China is on that upward trend, right? This is China's growth. In the cycle of an empire, they are on the way up. Whereas the United States, the percent change is only 28%. So if you're looking at how quickly a country is growing, China is clearly winning.
for sure.
Clearly winning. But we still do have a $10 trillion gap. Okay. Now, China I think, has passed us in purchasing power parity, which is a different thing.
Mhm.
And so that is important too. But the United States can't be written off as literally the largest consumer base, because we are not only a consumer base, we are not a producer base.
Yeah.
So we are a fantastic market for the rest of the world because we can't compete in terms of making our own stuff. So I don't agree with the Trump tariffs necessarily, but I do understand that argument. However, I don't actually think that is the argument. I don't necessarily think that is the actual reason that he's doing it.
Yeah. But how is that going to benefit the average citizen who's living on a fixed income?
Here's how. Listen to Ray Dalio for a second, because I also I've been searching for the Trump tariff answer for kind of a while. And the overall, because, the news will be like, okay, the economy is about to collapse. We're in a recession, all that, or a recession's, I think we've been in a recession, but a recession's coming, right? That's what the news says, legacy media says. But what they don't say is what on earth is actually going on. And we have kind of basic conversations about debt. And I've heard a lot of people, I think MMT actually says this too, that the debt doesn't matter. So listen to Ray Dalio for a second, because I feel like there are other pieces to this that are very important and may be part of what's happening here. Oh no, I didn't add it. Share this tab and let's add it. All right, let's watch Ray Dalio up in here.
The first thing is the debt issue. We have a very severe supply-demand problem. So we think there's debt and
that's very quiet. Can you guys hear him? Let me see if I can hear. I'm going to take this off. David, keep talking. I'm going to take this off and see if I can fix the sound
it's just
issue.
one thing that I wanted to always go back to is the idea of challenging the Chinese economy. That's to me where, because we all know where the discrepancies are, and as I always refer to this now, because it will be for the rest of my life, my first trip to China, to see with my own eyes as to where that country is, economically speaking. And what I saw was nothing but investments from within. In other words, any surplus the Chinese gets doesn't get all of it spent on defense, doesn't get all of it spent on space programs, doesn't all of it get spent on paying debts, even though the Chinese don't have much debt to begin with. It gets to be spent on domestic agendas, the infrastructures, the roads, the bridges, the airports, the welfare of the citizens. And I'm not talking about handout, because I don't know how the system works regarding the equivalency of Social Security. It might not exist there. I don't know. The short answer is I don't know. What I know is that they are investing in things that matter to the welfare of a citizen. That's to me where, and it became clear to me as to where those discrepancies are and why we are falling behind. And when I see now we go in with this tariff stuff, you might want to do this, but at the same time, who's going to end up paying? Who's going to end up paying those differences? Is the average citizen who's already squeezed to the limit. I always give that analogy of that an elderly at home that she's opening a fridge with one hand and have medication on the other hand, a bottle empty, an empty bottle for medication.
Right.
And she's deciding, do I buy medication or do I buy dinner? Well, I can do both.
And a shocking amount of people are in that position, but I think more than that, because of course, obviously, pay attention to the people who are in the lowest class, or who are the poorest. I mean, God knows, I've certainly financially struggled when I was younger. Absolutely, our family really struggled. So I very much understand that as an issue. I'm gonna cry, but I very much understand that. My biggest issue actually, my biggest issue is that. But secondarily, and what I think is more important, is that bottom 50% is more than that, but the bottom 50% doesn't have any assets. That's the thing that bothers me the most. And so, people very often talk about, the poorest of the poor. And although that is critically important, and I think that's really important to address, it really is the disparity between who holds the assets and who doesn't. Because there's the whole World Economic Forum agenda, right? And that whole agenda is you'll own nothing and be happy. Okay. Well, no one's happy with that. But the question is, who owns everything then? If you owned your own land, right, and you didn't have to pay the bank for it, because most people, if you have a mortgage, your bank actually owns your house, not you. But let's say you were able to pay for it. You have your land in cash. So now all you're paying is taxes on that land, right? It's here, depending on where you are.
Why should you even be paying taxes? On your land, Well, actually, the reason I'm saying this might sound very weird, whatever, but you have now the governor of Florida, DeSantis, is pushing for this idea of that you are owning your house and you still have to pay taxes. So he's pushing for that. Well, and I applaud him for that one, because what if by the time you own your house, you are already in a Social Security bracket?
Absolutely.
That means you're living on a specific fixed income.
So the word mortgage, mort, is the
la
first
mort,
word.
La mort.
It's a mortgage because mort means to die. It means death.
To die.
And so a mortgage is you pay it till you die. That's they could have called it anything else, and they called it a mortgage. But people don't, people here in the US don't speak French for the most part, and so they can't see like mortgage means pay it till you die. And so taxes on property actually are taxes on unrealized gains. So because your taxes go up based on the perceived value of your house, you didn't sell that house. You didn't get that gain. But it's taxes on unrealized gains.
And again, that's how, so to me, those ideas that tells you really who controls the policies.
Absolutely.
Wall Street,
banks, the freaking banks that own your mortgage, right?
I will never forget a story of someone I know that the bank ended up taking the house, even though they were in possession to sell it. They found a buyer, but the bank refused. Why? Because a foreclosed home will be more. And that's
the bank refused because the bank owns the home.
And it's just a shame. But again, we can criticize all we want. That's one thing. But there is another also aspect to the equation. And you know what that aspect is? Is that the people themselves are not willing to educate themselves about finances.
Absolutely.
They are illiterate. They choose to be illiterate. So you educate yourself about because thinking is hard. We're not willing to sit down and start learn the basics. But again, you look at the education system in America, it doesn't advocate for that.
Not at all. It absolutely does not advocate for that. But the thing is, if it did advocate for that, you would have an educated population, and an educated population then demands change and reform. It's just sort of understood that you get a mortgage. That's just an understood thing. And when I bought my first house, I had no idea what I was doing. And so I had to do the research and figure out how to get the best, how to do all of these things, because they definitely don't teach you that in school. But I mean, they teach you that in business school, like not how to buy a house, but they teach you how
but they don't
works,
teach you the value, to understand the value of how you manage the finances. No, they're not going to worry about that. They're going to talk about corporate finance and so forth, and which is good and all that to understand. But there's some fundamental. This is one thing I've learned about the Chinese when I was there. You know, one of the things they do, you know what it is? They save. They are savers, a nation of savings.
Well, so
a family will save money one way or another. For some other reason, that's how they've always been.
Well, so China, you have to understand, the generations in China right now are coming from a time when China was in poverty. The vast majority of people were in poverty. So that's a very common thing for societies that are in that position, because of course, right, you want to save because you know what it's like to not eat, right? Like, you know what it's like to not have money. And so that's very, very common for societies that were in that position. My grandparents were they were the same way. And they saved their entire lives. My grandfather, I think it took him, like, he whatever car he had for like a decade or 15 years. He would just like fix the same car, lived in the same house for like, I don't know, 40 years, right? Literally bought the cheapest food possible. I mean, it was very, very ingrained in that generation, but that generation's primarily gone. My grandfather died when he was 97. So that generation has passed. And the generations right now only know a country and a society that has lived and thrived on debt. Because how did the United States build to where it is right now? And this is not just the United States. All empires do this, right? It's not like China has no debt. It's just
it's managed.
Well,
it's managed, and they are not letting themselves go into a deep hole.
At this point in the empire, that's true.
Yeah.
But in the United States.
So what you're saying to me, what you're saying is that they're going to acquire more debt?
I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do.
I just don't see that.
You don't see that with this generation, because if you noticed, although
no. I'm going to push back against this.
Okay.
I don't see it because of the policies they are embarking on. Now, the difference between us and the Chinese is that we want and embarked on being in every part of the globe. That requires resources. I don't see Chinese embarking on that.
China is doing it a different way, because China is embarking on that. They're doing it economically, though, which is the smart way to do it, because, well, okay. So
but the economics is win-win for both parties.
Well,
this countries that's
China was giving the US money, and then the US was then sending it to Ukraine, and then China was also supporting Russia, right?
Well, they are friends. Of course, they're gonna support.
No.
Yeah.
They.
What you mean?
A bunch of our debt?
I see what you mean. You are meaning they play in both sides.
Yes.
Well, and that's part of the reality in the world, because
the US is doing it too.
We've been doing it for. Because here is the thing. Here is the thing.
Yeah.
What is the key aspect that every country will have to think about? It's its strategic interests.
Sure.
So China will be no exception to that rule.
I agree.
If they are supporting, if they are giving money to the US to give, that's the bonds, basically. That's what the US. Well, because we want the Chinese to buy our debt. So to the Chinese is a smart move to say, I better buy a little bit of US debt, and keep US at bay. Well, and that's what they did.
So China's been dumping a lot of US
recently.
bonds.
That's correct.
So
that is
in
correct.
The last couple of years, that's been happening. And I want to get to this clip by Ray Dalio, because I think it's very, very interesting. And I think it is a very big piece of what's happening right now. And I think what he outlines is one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, that the debt is actually a problem. But I don't disagree. And the United States and other countries do this. I mean, there's a movie we were telling your son about it, Lord of War, that talks about how it's both sides. It's been done. The banking, the Rothschilds did it. I mean, throughout the big banking history, that's been how the Rockefeller. That's what I mean. Yeah. It's been throughout banking history that's happened. It's I think inaccurate to say that China is not expanding its influence. China is absolutely expanding its influence. But what they are doing is they're doing it economically, which I think is a much better way than war.
Yeah.
Economics and building ports and BRI and all of that. That's obviously a much better way to extend your influence than war is. But both generate income for the country. And the United States has generated a ton of income by being at wars.
For the special interest groups.
Yes,
that's basically.
Yeah,
but in the case of the Chinese, isn't the other countries also benefiting? So won't you benefit from an infrastructure? I mean, just tell me right here.
Yeah.
Tell me right here if we have any speed train, if I am to compare it to the ones I saw in China.
Oh no, for sure.
None.
Unquestionably.
Zero. So why not? And that is where that's
special
what
interest groups.
Yeah, and that's what I'm
especially
trying.
Auto lobby.
That's what I'm trying to make a point of.
Yeah.
Is that you stated that the Chinese are expanding also. Yes, they are expanding economically, but at least the other countries are also benefiting from that. So because the intentions.
Yeah.
I asked people when I was in China.
Yeah.
There are a lot of. You'll be surprised how many speak English over there. So I was surprised, and I asked the questions. And the idea that China's not interested in dominance.
Well,
when I say dominance is keeping countries down. China's not interested in creating or fomenting tensions. This is where I see the difference between us and the Chinese.
Definitely. And like I said, if you're going to take over the world, economically is not a bad way to go. Okay. It's certainly not war. War is the worst way to do it, maybe possible. So the United States is certainly in the wrong for wars.
And we have been.
The way that the United States, it's not just the United States, Great Britain did awful things before. The British Empire, oh my God, they were known for their awful brutality. So it's not like the US is the first to do this, okay? But the United States absolutely created destruction, death, horrible things across the world as it expanded. So for sure, I do agree that the Chinese way of doing it is definitely better. But you also can't deny the fact that they are expanding and they are controlling more and more of global trade.
But again, I disagree with you on this.
You can't. It's what they're doing.
Well, they are doing it, but the objective is their objective to take over the world? The answer is
that's
no.
What I'm trying to say is I think the answer is yes.
No.
They're trying to secure their place.
Securing their place as far as economic interest for their well-being. What's wrong with that? Well, I will do that if I have the means.
No, I know that, but the United States is also doing that. They're just doing it in a bad way.
We are doing it for a reason, is to foment more tensions. I've been in the Middle East, for example, and I spend a lot of time in trying to understand the key issues as to why the Middle East never ceases to amaze me, as far as like a ball of mixed conflicts that can erupt anytime, only to find out at the end it was because we set it up that way. The Chinese are not doing that. Are the Chinese doing conflicts in Africa? But they are investing on. As a matter of fact, the US now is going to be sending a delegation to Africa.
Yeah.
Why? It's because the Chinese are
Here's why. I actually have a graph for why. Let me share this tab.
But I do disagree with you. I do disagree with you.
Here's the thing. I'm not saying that China's doing it wrong. What I am saying is they are doing it.
Yeah, they are, because they want to benefit their own country. And other countries will also benefit from the economic expansions. That's the point. My point is, the overall objective is not to take over the world, because they have no interest into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Any economy wants to stabilize their position globally. Okay. Every economy wants to rise. You're not going to see an economy that's like, oh, cool, let's just fail.
Okay.
Right? Every economy wants to rise. China is no exception. And right now, they are in the position to become the global leader. Now, the Chinese are not bright, flashy people. Okay. Americans are much brighter and flashier. Right. So for the Chinese, like, even if I think it was, who is it? Giant Bandari. Yeah. We had an interview with him, and he was talking about this. He was talking about the fact that really BRICS exists because China doesn't want to bring the attention to itself. That they want, that's what he said, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
China doesn't want
to they don't want to put a lot of attention on themselves. But that's how China has historically thrived. Like, it's interesting right now, there's all this anti-China sentiment.
Yeah.
But that's once everybody figured out that all of our manufacturing went there a long time ago. And so I think that it's important to pay attention to what China is doing. China is a very understated country.
Yeah.
They're not coming out here blasting like, hey guys, we're about to be number one. They're culturally not like that.
No, it's not that.
And so I just, all I'm saying is not that they're doing it wrong. I'm saying that they are expanding, and it is ridiculous to say that they're not. And taking over the world, it depends what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Because economically, China probably is going to be the next powerhouse. They probably economically are actually going to take over the world.
But it's still that keyword, taking over the world. In what way? Chinese are not interested. Look how we did it. The way we did it. How? Controlling the financial aspect.
Sure.
Chinese do not want the yuan, the currency, to be the global reserves like the US, because it comes with headaches. It comes with problems, which is exactly what we are experiencing. So China learned from the history as to what the US did wrong after 1945 till now. And now the system is, that's why the debt, it is where it is for us here with over $36 trillion.
I know that. Look, I'm not arguing. China and the United States are not in the same place as an empire. They're just not. And so comparing China and the US is really hard to do, because the United States is in decline and China's on the rise.
Yeah, but when you hear people saying, oh, they are expanding their military because they want to take over the world. No, they want to protect their interests.
I don't think that's true. And I'm not even talking about their military.
I know, but you have to have, for example, anytime, as you know, in history, we did it back after World War II, when the economy grew big. What did we do? We went ahead and expand the military to protect them. Well, what makes the case with China any different? Except that China's not interested in. Did China come over to near the Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf in Cuba, or in Latin America, whatever, and created problems?
No, and I'm not saying that. Like, you guys, I'm not saying that China is out to destroy the world. I'm not saying that. And the United States has used the tactic of going and blowing up basically whatever country they wanted influence in. They're like, all right, we're just going to replace this leader. Okay, we're going to bomb freedom into these people, right? The United States built our economy basically on war. Okay. So war and service industry. Yeah. That's what we've got. And now technology. But that's how the US has grown.
But even technology I don't know if we're going to compete with the Chinese or not.
They said, what I've heard, and I think this is probably true, is for right now, we're still ahead. However, the Chinese are catching up so fast that it probably won't be that way for very long.
I looked at two domains
That's
for
my understanding.
Quantum computing.
Yes.
And microchips.
Yeah.
This morning, NVIDIA just disclosed that now they developed the new type of microchips that's going to be required for AI.
Yes.
What have we developed?
Yes. Well,
and quantum computing, you know how it is.
Yeah.
And the reason why we fear it, especially, just to share this info with you, because we used to have a conversation in DC about this. When the era of quantum computing comes in, and you know who was more concerned about this than any other entity? Is the intelligence community.
Oh, sure.
You know why? Because quantum computing will be able to break the codes. And that became a very serious issue for the intelligence community.
And of course, I'm absolutely sure.
I remember.
But what
it still is.
What I am saying is, and I'm please, I'm not putting China down.
No, you're not. No. I'm sure you guys understand. This is just a conversation.
I'm not putting China down.
No. The community. No, Elizabeth. The community are smart enough to know. We are just discussing. We are just discussing.
The amount of people who are like, well, you don't know about China. You don't know
No.
Dude, I know about the economy. This isn't rocket science.
They're not
here,
going to
okay?
think in systems.
But
it's just for us to have a conversation that we can at least show the example of we still can disagree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just the way you see it versus the way I see it.
We're not disagreeing. That's what I'm trying to tell you, is we're not disagreeing. I agree that the United States did back in the day.
And still doing.
Its expansion using the foundation and basis of war.
That's correct.
That is how the United States built what it built. Okay.
That is correct.
That's a horrible way to build anything. It is maybe the worst way to build anything. China took that example and said, we're not going to do that because, quite frankly, China at the point where it really started to rise could not have competed militarily with the United States anyway. Not that it wanted to. Please do not hear. I don't think they wanted to, but
true,
they couldn't have, whether they wanted to or not. But what China did have is a large population that could be taught and excelled in manufacturing and excelled in economics and excelled as, I mean, basically China has become the world's manufacturer. Now, granted, that's going to Africa and a couple of other places right now as Chinese labor gets more and more expensive. And I will dive into the chart on Africa in a minute, I promise. And I promise I'll also show this Ray Dalio interview because it's really important. But China understood that the lifeblood of the global economy is trade. It is manufacturing. And so China did a smart thing. They made the whole world dependent on their stuff. That's brilliant. And so you guys think I'm putting down China, but I'm not. That's literally brilliant. I cannot imagine a better way to secure your place and secure your influence in the world. That's not a dig on China. That's actually hey, that's brilliant. They can't compete, or why would you want to compete militarily? That's awful. But they didn't anyway. What they did is they competed economically, and they made the whole of the United States their best market for decades. That's genius, actually.
Yeah. And now they are in position to expand their military, and they are ready because they are advancing in military.
Yes. But that's not the point. The point is that they did the smart thing that the U.S. didn't do. While the U.S. was off fighting wars, we neglected at home for decades. And that's why we are in a decline.
And we never won any war to begin with, any conflict.
That's because winning it does not make the money. Making the money comes from getting loans, living off debt, which is what the United States is doing right now. That comes from prolonged wars, not from winning them.
Most Americans do not know that we never defeated Vietnam. It was Vietnamese that won the war.
Yes,
most Americans they don't disclose this one.
But the Vietnam War was a wildly unpopular war here. I mean, it's not like everyone was like, "Yay, Vietnam!" People really didn't like. To my understanding, I was not here on this planet at that point. But I assume people did not like Vietnam. So
it was very different.
If I believe this completely, and this was Julian Assange quote. He said something like, "It gives me hope in humanity that humanity has to actually be manipulated into war. That the mass media has to manipulate people into war because they don't naturally incline towards it."
So that almost leads me to think about the idea of even a religion into this aspect. Whether religion is the basis for morality, which
I have a real issue with organized religion.
That's another conversation for another day.
Catholic school.
Let's say hi. Say thank you rather to Army with Harmony. Thank you so much for your super sticker. You wrote conflict, profit, tax.
Yes.
You hit the nail on the head, man. Thank you very much for your super sticker.
Yes.
Next one is Victor Chong. Thank you so much. Calm down. We ain't Britain. More specifically, we ain't Anglo-Saxon. The world is too big to conquer.
It's too big to conquer physically, but economically, China's doing a good job.
Yeah.
China has hands in every freaking country. So you can't tell me it's too big to conquer. China's trying, but like I said, it's not a bad.
No, it's not a bad thing.
Once again, thank you.
Once again, thank you very much, Victor. Yes. Really appreciate you. And Francis Tango. Oh, good to see you, Francis. Hi, guys. I think China is for world peace, not war.
I agree with that.
I couldn't agree more, Francis.
And please hear me. I've never said different. China is not a war, at least this version of China is not a warring country in any way.
No. Well, even throughout its history, remember the only time they went to war was for a specific reason.
Sure.
1967. That was the only reason. Why? Because Cambodia overthrew the Vietnamese government at that time. That is the only reason why. So basically, they want just to. Let's play the video.
Okay, let me share this actually really quickly. So this is the fastest growing
All
economies.
Right, let's see that.
Oh, Visual Capitalist has so many ads. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, let me see if I can make this bigger so we don't. I made it smaller. Okay, so real GDP growth projections. Okay. All right, so Visual Capitalist, I really like Visual Capitalist. Fastest growing economies in 2025. Look at that. South Sudan, Guyana, Libya, Senegal, and you keep going down. Look, oh God, Ozempic. Oh, I would never. That's a horrible ad. Go away. Go away, go away. Sorry, guys, I cannot get rid of this ad.
Now you see why the U.S. is sending delegations to.
Let me see. Did that get rid of that awful ad?
Which one was it? I didn't see.
It was for Ozempic. I would
No.
The Visual Capitalist has like a ton of ads, guys. Sorry about that. There's like some crazy stuff coming out about Ozempic and like people being on it for a year and like turbo. It's just insanity. If you want to check that out.
I want to say thank you here. I want to say thank you quickly to Peng Yu. Thank you so much for your super sticker. China is not forcing other countries to join them, unlike the US.
I agree.
No. Because this is
driving me bananas.
Because this is like what's at the heart of what really the global economy, what the global geopolitics and so forth. This is what's at the heart of it. It's this understanding or the misunderstanding in the US as far as what the media is saying regarding. I was there in China. I asked people. I talked to people. You know, they have I'm not like this journalist or whatever. I'm not. I just was a private citizen, wanted to have a conversation with another citizen in a country that I'm interested in learning about.
Sure.
And to my luck, some of them were educated. I mean, do you know how to articulate the ideas and so forth? And I asked the questions. That was the reason. It's what the media here, when I knew that some analysts, and I knew their background in Washington, have been working for the State Departments, have been assigned to embassies around the world. That means they have acquired a little bit of experience coming forward and saying the Chinese economy is going to collapse. And that's when it became like just shaking my head. Well, this is a narrative that's just been pushed into that direction.
It's not true. The thing is, like, if you read any news headline, it's like, world is ending. World is ending. Here's another way the world is ending. And also you could get murdered. I mean, the news is nothing but like, it's like sensationalist crap. Like and it's why legacy media is dying is because it is nothing but sensationalist crap. So like, if you see a headline like the Chinese economy is collapsing, like,
well, this is what we do in this channel to provide
ridiculous.
At least
that's ridiculous.
To provide in this channel, hey guys, this is what we do regarding this aspect here is to provide the counter arguments to that. So this way you have both sides of the argument, and you are intelligent enough to decide for what makes sense to you. You reach that conclusion. We won't reach it for you, but I see the point of what Peng Yu just said, that the idea of what we're trying to do versus what the Chinese are doing. And again, I asked the questions back there. I intend to go back to Asia in the summer and so forth, because there is still more to learn about where things are headed. The world is changing. You all know this. The multipolarity is underway. It becomes now how economically is going to be done, especially for us here Americans, because we're going to have to be concerned how things are going to move forward financially.
Oh, absolutely.
And it does look, I'm concerned
too.
Because it's kind of like you work this hard, you get to this stage of your life, and you still have to deal with the struggles of finance.
Oh, absolutely. And the United States is in a really challenging spot. And like, please hear me. I never anywhere did I say that China's forcing
No.
This is crazy, guys. I absolutely did not say that. But I am saying that it is important to note influence. My realm is influence, is understanding where influence falls. The United States is saying all this dumb stuff about China because people are pissed off that here in the United
how
States,
the system is.
people are pissed off at how bad stuff is, right?
Yeah.
Like you people may not be educated as to what's happening, but they know nothing good is happening, right?
Yeah.
They know that when somebody from the Biden administration came out and said the economy is stronger than ever and inflation is transitory, people know that's wrong. It does not take a high IQ to realize stuff is going really badly here.
Yeah.
And so the US government's not going to be like, well, the central banks did it. They're not going to say that. What they are going to say is it's China. It's China's fault. They're the ones who did. That's stupid. That's stupid. It's misdirection. It's taking the eyes off the central bankers, which, by the way, China has a central bank, has central banks also.
Yeah.
It's if you want to understand why economies rise and fall, do research into the central banks
to understand,
because it's not even the governments that run things, it's the central banks.
Bank.
Who do you think runs our government? It's whoever runs the money. And who runs our money? It's the Fed, which is a private bank. It's not a government entity. So even if you're looking at how are the private banks, how are the central banks going to make money, you look at that throughout history and you see what has collapsed and what has risen. Because you can blame the United States for the IMF, but it's not the United States specifically that was the IMF.
Yeah.
It was the central banks that were the IMF. So I'm asking everyone to take a deeper cut, not the like China good or bad, US good or bad.
Yeah.
Everything is run by money. That's why we changed the channel to geopolitics and money. And so China has done a phenomenal job. And China right now is great. China is on the upswing.
Is in a good position.
From what I can tell, they're actually being very responsible financially about where they go in and put their money, put their investment. From what I can tell, they're actually being very responsible. And so, I know a lot of our viewers are very, very pro-China. China can do no wrong. Everything is perfect in China. But there are a lot of people here in the United States saying the same thing about the United States. It's not true in either case. Okay.
Yeah. Well, every government has its own shortcomings. That's normal.
But that's what I'm saying is what I'm asking people to look at is what are the financial incentives behind things? And yes, right now things look really, really good, but President Xi Jinping is not always going to be there. The same government's not always going to be there.
They are already thinking about next phase because China will have to keep going after Xi Jinping. So.
And I do think that he's been a phenomenal leader.
Yeah,
I think he's taken China to this extraordinary place. Yeah. But as you can see in the United States, when we change, administrations, things change. It's just we change it more rapidly, so you can see that faster. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just saying, I'm asking our viewership to be very open-minded about even the things you think are going well at this point. Look further out into the future.
And especially if we go back to Africa here, because there's something to say about this one here. This is why you're seeing now, just to give you guys a heads up, the rivalry, it's going to intensify between the US and China in Africa, because China has already been there, putting investments and so forth. The US now, and I am aware of it, and I'm going to be talking about this on the other channel at some point from a geopolitical aspect, because when you see, for example, South Sudan, the US is already thinking about sending an envoy to South Sudan. There's already certain steps that the US wants to take. There's also two Eastern countries. I think one of them is Chad. I don't remember the other one. And all this has to do because China is already there and investing. Yeah. So the Americans are coming now with saying, we will give you money for projects and so forth. And that falls back to the IMF part.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, there is one country now, Morocco, just got a loan from IMF. Well, Morocco needs to think twice. Moroccan's government is thinking going the other direction. So far, they got about, to my knowledge, about $1.4 billion. Morocco is not a country that can afford that kind of loans because they won't be able to repay it. Let alone the unemployment is so high. The corruption is massive there, especially with their prime minister and so forth. My last visit, I was able to I was floored when I found out how.
Yeah.
But in any event, that's their country. They can decide for what they want. The point is that you're going to see this rivalry that's going to move from a geopolitical aspect into economic in Africa, and that's just part of what things are.
So Africa. So there's a couple of other really interesting things that are going on. But if you look at the highest growth GDP, now granted, they have a long way to go.
Of course.
So it's not like
no, it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
No.
Well, and large growth can happen when you have a large gap to cover, right?
Yeah.
If you have a small gap to cover, you're going to cover less ground. So percentage points are important, but they're only one factor. But if you look at how much of that is in Africa, Africa is a really phenomenal resource.
Yeah.
Africa overall, I mean, it's a continent. There are a lot of countries in Africa, so it's not across the board, obviously, but there's a large population growth there. There is population growth where most places in the world there is a population decline.
Yeah.
And now we have oil. There's a bunch of resources in Africa that are hopefully going to be responsibly mined, that's going to be handled responsibly, I hope.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring that up because Africa really is on, obviously not Africa as a whole, but a lot of countries in Africa are on an economic upswing. Okay, do you guys want to see this video from Ray Dalio?
Yeah, let's listen to that.
Because it's important.
And we'll see if there's questions from the community.
And I know we're over time.
Yeah, we are. But it's all right.
We'll end with this and I wish we could have gotten to it sooner. But listen to what Ray Dalio says about the debt. No. Okay, I'm going to remove this, play the ad, and then I will bring it back. There's ads everywhere.
Yeah, that's what they do.
All right, hold on. Give me 10 seconds, and this.
So that's just part of what they do. So it's the idea. Y'all know how it is, guys. I mean, we do sometimes advertisement too, but we do it differently. That's why we do specific video, but we bring the analysis for you for a specific topic related to what they need.
Okay,
so I understand.
Hopefully, this will actually play.
I think the first thing is the debt issue. We have a very severe supply-demand problem. So we think there's debt, and some people think, oh, we'll handle it this weekend and so forth. I don't think they understand the mechanics of debt. By the way, I've written the draft of a book that anybody can see on social media, particularly LinkedIn, that goes through the mechanics of the debt. But there's a supply-demand problem, so that they have to sell a quantity of debt that the world is not going to want to buy. And that's a set of circumstances that is imminent. Okay, that's.
Hold on, before I continue, because this is like super important. Can you guys hear him? Because could not hear it clearly. This is so frustrating.
That means it wasn't meant to be.
No. All right, you guys, I'm putting this link in the chat because this is really worth hearing. Basically, what he says is that people talking about debt for the most part don't understand the dynamics of debt. And right now, our debt is around 7% of GDP. And that we need other countries to buy our debt because that's how our government is run right now.
Yeah.
And they will not start to want to actually buy our debt until it's about 3% of GDP. And so that's a really big problem because that's a bit of a wide gap. And he says the fact that other countries don't want to buy our debt is like a problem no one's really talking about.
Yeah.
So in terms of tariffs, that was an interesting sort of thought experiment of, especially we have China, right? The tariffs that were just put on China, it's 20% on top of the 10. So it's actually
25.
Yeah. I think it's 30. I think it's 30.
Yeah.
Because it's 20 on top of the 10 from before.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it's a large number. And so especially looking at China sort of having dumped an enormous amount of our debt, and, they still hold a lot, right? Let me share this Let me share
While
this
you're doing this, I want to
graph.
say thank you to Victor. Victor, once again, man, appreciate your support.
Oh, thank you.
This say if you sneeze, it's China's fault.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you're right. I
The
see your
United,
point.
the
I know
United
it's
States,
humorous, but you got a
yeah.
point there. You got a point there. Thank you so much, Victor.
Yeah.
Really appreciate
No,
you.
the United States is villainizing
Yeah,
China, and I think
it's-
very inappropriately, because who sent manufacturing to China?
Yeah.
Who did that?
Yeah.
The United States, U.S. companies did that. It's U.S. corporates and U.S. central banks who sold out the United States.
Yeah.
It is absolutely not China who did that. And the more we try and put the blame on someone that the blame is not on, I think the less we're able to actually pay attention to whose fault it was.
And fix the problem. Yeah.
Corporate America, Ford, for example, Ford, the American brand of vehicle, freaking made in Mexico.
Yeah.
They were the last holdout, but it's like built American all the way, and then it's made in Mexico and still ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
Like, that isn't Mexico's fault. That's US corporate interests' fault. So please hear, I am not blaming China. And I think that it's actually really irresponsible for anyone to blame China right now. It is not China's fault that the US is in this situation. Yeah. Okay, let me share this lovely.
Which one is that?
It's this is, oh my gosh. There's so many ads. Are ranked the top 20 countries holding the most US debt, and this is recent. So if you look at, so Japan, God, Japan, what a Princes of the Yen. I cannot recommend that book enough. And then China, this is very, very low. I don't have a graph here for how much China has dumped, but it's quite substantive. And so China owns close to $1 trillion in US debt, and it used to be a lot more than that. But it's a massive owner of US debt, and it has not been particularly interested in purchasing more.
Yeah, but especially for Japan, Japan is a lost cause. Japan and South Korea, they're like just.
That's
like
just.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know, Donald Trump went ahead and sanctioned the Japanese aluminum.
Trump is in a challenging situation, and I don't think he's doing things the right way. Please let me preface
Trump is
that.
he's not.
Because I think he's definitely not doing things the right way. But I will say he inherited a really, really challenge, and he contributed to, because he was president before. So it's not just inherited. Yeah. Thank you very much. But he did inherit a really challenging situation. I would like to show this as my last graph, and then I promise we will let you guys go. Let me find it. I really okay, here it is. So this is from Wolf Street, but the source is the US Treasury Department. Let me make this a little bit bigger and share this tab. And guys, if you are interested, please watch the video that I linked to the clip from Ray Dalio, because it's very interesting. Okay, so this is the US national debt. God.
Wow.
Since 2018, which wasn't that long ago. So I just want to put that out there. There's a couple of other really interesting graphs in here. This is actually a super interesting article, but it goes into like who actually owns debt, which is a really important thing to know. But foreign holdings of our debt is about 30%. So if the rest of the world doesn't buy our debt because the debt to GDP ratio is so high, then the United States has to do something, because we cannot afford to keep doing this. And QE, they can't do QE. They can't QE. They can't money print anymore.
Anytime they print, and the more they devalue the value.
The thing is, people watch so much of that happen after the COVID years that I think that QE would be a massive, massive uproar, massive mistake, because you can't Weimar Germany this.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's what when you have an incompetent government. So let's just say it straightforward. So let's hope the next generation will learn something. But anyway,
Oh, Army with
but-
Harmony. You should hear Epstein give his opinion on. Yeah. That's look into that.
Yeah.
It's a thing for sure. It's for sure.
Anyway, guys, well, we hope you guys enjoyed some of this. Remember to join me tomorrow on the other channel. I'm going to be addressing the recent developments of the strikes by the US on the Houthis. There are some very, very new info that's coming out. I was looking into that yesterday at night. And so I'm thinking of doing a live stream for you on the other channel regarding geopolitics. So, and we'll
The other channel is Geopolitical Trends. For the people who are new, David goes live on Geopolitical Trends.
And say hi next time so I know you're there. So
Well,
text me. I have my number there.
Yes.
So.
And some of you guys thought it was a fake account, which is possible because there are fake accounts of us.
Yeah, that's why I didn't
expect.
I didn't expect it there. I mean, I was like, what are the odds? You're busy all the time. So I kind of like, what are the odds? So next time text me ahead of time. So I said,
well, we have
so I won't say
I
there is no Elizabeth here.
Yes.
It's just me. So,
that was so funny. That was so funny.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, well, we hope you all enjoyed and you learned something, and we look forward to seeing you next time. All right, guys, you take care. Bye.